As parents, we want the best for our children, to see them thrive, achieve their potential, and become responsible, successful adults. A significant part of this involves teaching them smart money management. While I believe anyone can become financially independent on their own without help, it always helps to have somebody that pulls you to success. In this episode, we share 5 ways parents can help their kids be millionaires. Carla, did your parents help you become a millionaire?
Not directly, but they certainly supported me in a lot of the ways that I think we are going to talk about today. Did your parents help you become millionaires? A millionaire?
Not by contributions towards my financial accounts, but perhaps in a way they did by either being good role models for money or not such good role models for money. So I think many people probably have that situation where their parents are one way or another, or maybe both. Maybe you have one parent who's really good with money and another parent who isn't as good with money. But I think you can learn from both. And you just got to figure out what you want for yourself and then shape your habits in order to get the best outcome for yourself.
Absolutely. Your parents are your first and biggest role models in life, and you can learn a lot from them in either direction. Either this is the way I don't want to go, or yeah, that's a really awesome model that I want to follow. So I thought it would be fun to take a peek into the lives of some celebrities who could easily, on any given day, help their kids become millionaires by just dumping giant piles of cash on them because they have giant piles of cash sitting around. But there are a lot of those very wealthy celebrities who have said publicly, I'm not going to do that. I think kids need to make their own way in the world, and I'm not passing on my wealth to them. When I'm gone, everything is going to some sort of charity instead of just going directly to my kids. So I pulled a few celebrity quotes that I thought would be interesting for folks to hear about. So Jeff Goldblum has said that children should make their own way in life. And his quote was, "Gotta row your own boat. Like, I'm not your meal ticket. I'm not just going to pave the way for you. You got to make things happen." Warren Buffett, I think, is probably one of the most famous examples. He has been very public about not wanting to just pass all of his money onto his kids. And it is a lot of money. Warren Buffett's net worth is hovering like over $100 billion. So we're talking about a lot of cash here. However, there are some caveats to a lot of these statements that wealthy celebrities have made. And Buffett is no exception. He has said, well, I'm not going to give my kids my money. It's all going to charity. But I am giving over $2 billion to the philanthropic organizations that my kids run. That's what he's said. So no, he's not giving the money directly to his kids, but he's basically providing them with a job for life, right? You are not going to get fired from the nonprofit that you run or like play a significant role in if dad was the one who like created the whole thing in the first place or very well funded it. Sting is another fun example of this, I think. So Sting's net worth, this blew my mind. Well, let me just ask you, how much do you think Sting is worth?
A lot, especially after that P. Diddy contract where he has to get paid, I heard, like $2,000 a day just for one song recorded in the 90s that he sampled from. I would guess.
Yeah, give me a number.
380 million.
550, according to this website. I will say, like, you got to take all these things with a grain of salt, right? But that's a big chunk of cash for Sting to be sitting on. So what Sting has said is, quote, obviously, if they were in trouble, I would help them. But I've never really had to do that. And I really appreciate that. So Sting is another one who falls into the category of like, they have a safety net under them, but I'm just not going to pass all my wealth on to these kids. Ashton Kutcher is another one who said something similar. And then this Elton John quote I thought was especially interesting. So Elton John is worth about $500 million, less than Sting. That blows my mind. But he has said, of course, I want my boys in a very sound financial state, but it's terrible to give kids a silver spoon. It ruins their life. So some strong opinions there. So I think these are just some interesting perspectives to consider about if you are not Elton John or Sting or Warren Buffett, you probably aren't sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars, but maybe you have made your way up in the world. Maybe you are making your way up in the world right now and you're thinking about how to leave money to your kids. I think these are just some interesting perspectives to consider from people who are like way high up on the mountain of financial success. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on these perspectives, David?
I think it's interesting and entertaining to hear thoughts about celebrities who maybe they started out with not a lot of money
Mhm.
and through their hard work and hard effort amassed either a small or a large fortune. So I think it's interesting to hear their perspectives on how they think about money. But it's also interesting where the parenting overlaps because we want what's best for our kids and we understand that money alone does not make you happy. We want our kids to be happy. So if I was going to push back on any of these celebrities, I'd say, okay, well, what have you done to build happiness for your kids outside of the money conversation? What kind of parenting techniques did you use to help your kids grow into solid adults? And maybe money management is one of those, but I would like to have that bigger conversation.
Yeah, I think that will be very helpful to all of us who are not Warren Buffett or Sting. I think these are questions that parents wrestle with. And even though I'm not a parent, I certainly have kids in my life that I care about. So I think these are interesting questions to ponder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sort of an overarching assumption that we are making in today's discussion is that you are taking care of yourself financially, because I do think the best thing you can do as a parent is not be a financial burden to your kids, either when they're young or as they grow into adulthood. Knowing that mom and dad are okay and you don't have to send them a check every month is really powerful. That's a way of supporting your kids in an extremely big way. So I think that's an important caveat to make here is don't set your kid up for financial success while you are kind of circling the financial drain yourself, because that's just setting everybody up for failure.
So the purpose of this conversation is to just share some ways that if you're in a situation where you feel you're on track already financially and you're in a position to then want to help your children in some way, here are just 5 ideas that we've come up with. Some of them I've used, some of them I plan to use, but I think all of them are valuable to consider at different stages and for different reasons. Everybody's family situation is extremely unique. This is not a declaration of you should or shouldn't help your kids with money. This is not a morality discussion on you're not a good parent if you don't, or you're not a good parent if you do. That's not what this is. This is if you're squared away financially and you have the means and the desire to help your kids achieve millionaire status, which who knows, by the time our kids are 30 years old, that's probably not going to mean a whole lot, but it's going to be better than zero.
Absolutely.
Here we go. Let's get it started, Carla.
All right. So I think the first strategy that you can take is to just invest for your children. This means putting money directly into an account that has their name on it. So this is something that you're not going to touch. It will belong to them. And as they become adults, they will have this money available to them. This is just one example of if a parent wanted to set their kid up to be a millionaire by age 30, that would require investing $671 per month from the month that the baby is born all the way until the month that the kid turns 30 years old. So at an 8% interest rate, that is going to turn into pretty much dead on $1 million as they turn 30. That's a pretty nice 30th birthday present to give your kid. But $671 a month is a very major commitment every single month for 30 years. So again, we're just putting this out there as one possibility that parents could consider if this is a goal for them. But that is the number that it would take. So what are your thoughts on setting your kid up with that kind of contribution to a brokerage account, David?
I think we understand the power of compound interest or compounding. And this takes full advantage of that to the best that you can, unless you start investing for your kid before, which maybe you have if you're that on top of it. So it definitely takes care of compound interest. So you're in a much better situation contributing anything at that early stages than nothing, or even waiting and contributing a larger sum later. You have to run your own math. But there's a lot of computations out there that indicate if you contribute smaller amounts earlier, they grow over time to be much, much larger amounts later than if you wait till you're two-thirds mark through that time period and then start contributing. Well, now you're contributing a whole lot more money, and you may not even you would have to contribute a whole lot more money, and then you still might not get to that desired $1 million at 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Take advantage of the power of compound interest. It really, really matters. And if you can't do the whole amount, that's okay. We're just throwing numbers out there so you have some kind of framework. But if you could do half that, or even just $100 or $200, whatever you can do, I don't think you're going to, when the child turns 21 or 26 or 30, I don't think you're going to be like, well, I really wish I wouldn't have started that $100 contribution so long ago. I think you'll be very surprised at what your balance is.
Yeah. I will note that if you want to do it as just one lump sum, like the day your kid is born, it would take $100,000 to just put one lump sum in and never have to touch it again, never have to make additional contributions. And over the course of 30 years, that would turn into $1 million at 8%. So I think the monthly contributions is more palatable for most people instead of parting with $100K on the day your kid is born. But that is the number that would get you there if you're looking for that upfront sum. But yeah, that is setting your kid up for an extreme level of security and just possibilities at a very young age. So if that's a gift you can give your kid, a very solid 30th birthday present.
And whether you decide to lump sum it or do the monthly contributions, once you've made a decision to contribute, the very next question you're going to have is, okay, what kind of account do I contribute to? And you have a few options for kids. One is a UTMA or UGMA account, Uniform Gift to Minors Act. They're basically the same kind of account. And basically, that's a brokerage account in your kid's name. And when they turn 18, it automatically shifts to their ownership. So you can imagine some of the potential pros and cons of that. Another type of account to consider is just a general brokerage account. This is what I would advise. In my own situation, I have used UTMA accounts for my kids, but in hindsight, I think I would just use a brokerage account under my name and contribute money to it, still under my name, but have it earmarked for them. And then when they hit young adulthood or 30 or whenever it's appropriate to shift that to their side, to their net worth, then I could do that judiciously, maybe with a little bit more discernment through those early adult years.
I do like the idea of having it in your name as an adult because it does give you control, especially if your kid, maybe they get into some kind of trouble. Maybe they're facing an addiction problem. You never know what's going to happen with any given person, especially a kid who's not a fully formed adult yet. So I would be a fan of that idea of giving yourself a little bit more control. And then as the kid demonstrates that they're capable of handling it, then you can hand that over.
And then there are some impacts, and I know rules change over time, but there are impacts, and we'll talk about college a little bit later. But depending on where the money is in particular accounts, it may or may not impact their ability to receive particular kinds of financial aid for college. So that's another thing to think about. Okay. Another account that a lot of people use and is very popular is a 529. That's specifically for education. Now there's, again, rules change with how you can use 529 funds in young adulthood, and that's worth exploring. So before you decide on which account to actually start contributing to, do your homework on at least those three. Again, my vote would be for a brokerage account in your name under your Vanguard or Fidelity account. And then as adults, then begin to shift that over based on the most recent data you have and relationships that you have with your kids and that they have with the world around them to make it smartest. And it mitigates a lot of that downside risk that you, Carla, that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. That sure does. So walk us through the second strategy that we have for helping your kids become millionaires.
Sure. At some point, like that can be everything we just did in that first one. That's kind of behind the scenes. That doesn't have to be an overt conversation with your kids. You just know you're helping them and you're taking action so that they have that some kind of amount of net worth at some point in their future. As they grow, you're going to want to start teaching them basics about money, why it's important, how it actually works. And one way you can do that is to show them how compound interest works. Now, you may have already contributed some money, which is great. Additionally, if you're in a position to do so, when they get old enough, I think around 10, 11, 12 is probably a good age to do this. They're getting to that, preteen, teenage years where money is a big deal and they see games that they want. They go have ice cream or boba tea with their friends after school. So they're starting to grow their relationship with money. But this is also a really good time for them to not only learn how to manage money they have in their pocket, but to actually see how money grows over time. So an idea that I have, and I will very likely start with my son when he turns 11 in just a few weeks, is it's kind of a two birds with one stone. I think I'm going to put $100 cash into an envelope, and every month I'm going to hand it to him. I'm going to say, okay, now let's say 50% of your income, give it back to me. I take that $50, put it into a brokerage account, broad market, low cost index fund like Vanguard's VTSAX or Fidelity's FKSAX, one of those.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly the ticker symbol. And then, so we're not looking at the account that we've been building net worth for him over time, because that might be a big number by this point and might throw him off and not very relatable. But if you start with the minimum you can in that account and then add that $50 every month, over the course of a few years, he's going to start seeing that line, that compound interest growth. Hopefully, hopefully it's going up, maybe it's going down. But either way, he starts to understand compound interest and how investments can grow. And he gets into the habit of actually taking money, tangible money, and putting it somewhere to invest. So that's a way that kids can be active participants in their own money knowledge. And that's a very simple way, I think. You're not asking them you're not teaching them accounting fundamentals or anything like that. You want them to get used to seeing and getting into the habit of contributing automatically whenever you get income, and that it just doesn't go to nowhere. Here's the value. Here's what happens to the value over time, whether it goes up or down. And then you could talk about that. You can use that, whether it's going up or down. You can talk about why that might be happening and why staying the course is a good call. So this gives another framework of continuously learning about something that they can see that's theirs versus just, I think my parents have a lot of money or we're struggling financially.
I love that idea. I've also heard of parents who let their kids sort of get the individual stock picking out of their system. And it also just helps them understand what it really means to own a stock. If you tie it to one individual company, I think it might be a little bit easier to understand. So have them pick a company that they know and care about. Maybe it's Nintendo, or maybe it's, their favorite ice cream brand, and put a little bit of money, emphasis on a little bit, into an individual stock so that they can understand, when Bluebell ice cream is having a bad day, I'm having a really bad day. This is, all my money is in Bluebell. Mm-hmm. And it will help them see, which happens a lot. There's listeria outbreaks, right? So it will help them see real world events can be tied to the performance of my stocks. And that's why it's powerful to diversify my portfolio and invest in a lot of different things. Now, you could pick the next Apple and your kid could get very tied to individual stock picking. But on the flip side, you will have picked the next Apple, and so your stock will perform quite well. But I think, maybe picking a few that they can watch will help them understand just the different ways that stocks go up and down, and for different reasons why they go up and down. So that would be a thought to consider.
Carla, what is your number one stock pick for your imaginary kid if you had to do it right now? Which one would you advocate?
I probably would pick something that they were very familiar with. So if they have maybe an iPad that they really love, I'd say, well, let's buy a little bit in Apple. But I think I would tailor it to their interests. And I would also be excited to usher them towards something that I didn't think was going to perform very well. And then, you put $100 in that, that's $100 very well spent if it helps them understand, oh my gosh, I lost 30% overnight. That was a real bummer. Yesterday I had $100 and today I have 70. So I don't know what's on its way down, but I would encourage them to pick things that they know and are familiar with. Hopefully like a couple of winners and a couple of losers. Yeah. What about you?
Ooh, I put you on the spot, but I wasn't ready. But if I were to pick anything to hold over the next 30 years, and look, this is not, please, if you're listening to this, we are not advocates of buying individual stocks. This is purely just off the cuff here. If I had to pick a single stock to hold for the next 30 years, it would be Google. That's what I would advocate, because they're on Google they see it. Kids always go to search engines. It's Google. It's right in front of you. They're making leaps in AI, got their hands in everything. A lot of information being bought and sold. So I think whatever technology and whatever the future has, Google and companies like Google will be in an advantage.
That makes total sense to me. And hopefully that's one of these winners that you pick. All great advice.
Or it goes to zero and we no longer have a YouTube channel.
All right. Talk to me about strategy number 3 for getting your kids to that coveted millionaire status.
The first way to help your kid was to invest as early as you can, whether it be lump sum or monthly investments. The second was teach them about how some money principles like compound interest. The third, now in their teenage years, maybe they want to work. Maybe they want to get a job and start saving money, or probably more likely want to start spending money because that's what kids do. They want to go out and spend their money, but it puts them in a unique situation. If, depending on your state, I'm not sure the legal age of a child actually having legal work, but I believe it's 15 for most states. So if your child is 15 and they go get a job, whether it's at a smoothie shop or a restaurant, whatever it is, and they start getting income, they can contribute to a Roth. Now, they're not 18 years old, so you will have to start a custodial Roth IRA for your child. And it's whatever earned income they make up to whatever that year is. In 2025, the Roth limit contribution is $7,000. So if your child makes $7,000, they can put that entire $7,000 into a Roth. That's a custodial account. That's another way you can show them how to invest. So once it's there, then they invest in your VTSAX or VSKAX. And that's another way that they can build wealth. Now, do you expect your child to put 100% of their money into that Roth account? Absolutely not. You want them to have some of that. They're the ones going to work. They're the ones who are doing it for a reason, usually probably for something fun, like going to the movies or hanging out with their friends or buying gifts or makeup or whatever it is. And that's great. They're also continuing to learn how to manage their own money. But what you could do as a parent is look at their pay stub. If they've made that week, say they made $117, you can then go to your checking account or go log on to their Roth IRA account and then transfer that $117 from your checking to their IRA account. Now, what I would advocate and what I've done with my daughter when she turned 15 and did that, we started her a Roth IRA. Whatever she contributed, I doubled. But I was aware that it makes sure that we don't pass either the limit for her Roth IRA that for that year or the amount of money that she actually made. So if her paycheck was $200 and she contributed $100, I would contribute another $100, if that makes sense. So that's one way that a parent can help their kid once they start working. Now, when they turn 18, all you have to do is get on a phone call with either Vanguard or Fidelity, and they will shift ownership of that Roth IRA basically from you to them. I think it took me all of about 20 minutes to do that over the phone.
That is an incredibly generous thing to do as a parent, to have that doubling effect. I think it's really motivating for a kid to go out and get a job if they know that their income is basically going to be doubled because their parents are able to help contribute to their future in that way. I love that idea. And I, as I talked about in an earlier episode, am not someone who started working at a very young age. Besides some babysitting gigs, my first real job was in college. So I like the idea of encouraging your kids to work at a young age. I think it instills a sense of responsibility. I think it gives them a sense of pride of ownership over the money that they're earning. And hopefully that turns into financial responsibility because they see the power of those dollars and what it can do for them and the effect it'll have on their future. So I love this one. I think it's powerful in a number of ways.
So the next one is actually a lesson that even many adults haven't really locked in on.
Yeah.
But it's something that we, in particular in the financial independence community, and maybe not just finance, I would assume all of personal finance, or anytime you have limited resources and just want to use them in the most efficient, valuable way possible, is to understand what you value. But part of doing that is then you reflect what you value out in the world and you assess things out in the world, but then you use money as a tool to trade for certain things. So framing value to your kids throughout their childhood is a tool that they will be able to use to help them make better decisions about how they spend their time, how they spend their money, how they spend their effort throughout their entire lives. So this is a big lesson, but you can convey it in bite-sized chunks. For example, this last week, my son and I went to get ice cream. He wanted to go. He had gone to a particular ice cream shop before, really liked it. He says, "Dad, I'd like to go. Let me show you this ice cream shop." So we go. And I try not to be, you can get way more ice cream, but you got to say it sometimes just so that they know. So I try not to be too hard about spending money that I don't think is worth it. but it was an experience, so we went for it. He did get a cone, he got a sugar cone, and he got a big old scoop of ice cream on top of it. And I got a little cup. Yeah, why not try it? And I think our total came to be like $14.50. So we're back in the car. We're enjoying our ice cream. I'm like, Quentin, I had fun. I'm glad we got this ice cream. But did you know you could get 3 big containers of ice cream for about the price that we just paid for that? If we just got it at the grocery store and had it and kept it at home in our freezer. And his eyes got real big. And then we went on to talk about something else. But to frame it in that way, hopefully it's planting little seeds of, it's not his money, it's his daddy's money. So that does make it easier for kids to do.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, it's going to be his own money. And maybe he'll think about that experience and many other like it before he just to be aware of what he's getting for that trade.
That's such a good example because it's something that does come up a lot. Kids love going to get ice cream. Everyone loves going to get ice cream, but especially kids. And I hope that lesson will really stick with him. And maybe next time you guys are at the grocery store together, you can walk down the ice cream aisle and say, look how much a half gallon of ice cream costs. Then let's think about that compared to the single serving that we got at the shop.
Yeah.
And that is something that can just translate to so many different areas of your life, right? You show them that, hey, maybe, so this is certainly true for me. I don't give 2 hoots about cars. I think they are a piece of machinery that gets me from one point to another. Just a useful thing to have around. Don't care what it looks like. Just couldn't care less about cars. So for me, I would want to model that value to my kids. Like, this is just not a thing that matters that much to me. So I'm not going to spend a lot of money on it. We're going to drive an old kind of beat up car. And that's okay. As long as it's safe and it gets us around, that's what we need. But maybe I do really care about this other area of my life. Like you, little hypothetical child, I really care about you. So I'm going to invest in your future well-being by making these contributions to your account, or I'm going to invest in your education. There's so many ways that you can demonstrate what matters is where we put our dollars, and what doesn't matter is where we scrimp whenever we can, because it doesn't hurt our quality of life to scrimp in the areas that just don't mean that much to us. So if we like ice cream, let's get it at the grocery store, or let's even make it at home. It'll be fun. It'll be a memorable thing you guys do together. And you can probably get that cost down even more if you make it yourself. So lots of great examples. But as you said, this is a lifelong lesson for not just kids, but for all of us, right? We're always trying to be better about having our dollars go where our values are. So it's a huge lesson. And I think it starts at an incredibly young age and continues way into adulthood.
So for the 5th way you can help your kid become a millionaire, up to this point, your child probably has some net worth built up from your contributions to the earlier account that we talked about. They've got a Roth IRA and they're probably in their early 20s. Maybe they were going to college. Maybe they're already working and continuing to save and invest. They understand the value of a dollar. They understand compound interest. But as your kid approaches their late 20s, they will continue to have either maybe financial struggles or financial desires, or there's things that you might want to help with to make their adult life a little less volatile financially. For example, maybe they've got student loans. You might want to help pay them off. Maybe they want to buy a house. You might want to help with that down payment. Maybe they're going to get married. Maybe you want to help with that. There's ways you can start shifting your money over to their side to help them continue to grow their net worth. And we just read a book and we did a show on it. The book is called Die with Zero by Bill Perkins. And I'm not sure exactly where he got the information from, but it makes sense. And he states that the best time to transfer your wealth to your children is from the age 26 to, I think he said 35. So as we go through these ways to help your kids become a millionaire, this is a logical next milestone. You're very likely retired, or maybe even later in your years if your kid's approaching 30. And if you're actually doing these things, you've got a pretty good handle on your own finances and whether this is actually a feasible approach or not for yourself in your particular circumstance. But if it is, now is the time when you can start shifting some of your own wealth, transferring some of that wealth to your kids. Or you could just start shifting money. I don't know what your portfolio looks like. I don't know if you've got a house paid off. I don't know if you've got what types of accounts your money's in. I don't know your insurance. I don't know your medical coverage situation. But at this point in your life, you have a good grasp of that understanding. you can decide the smartest way to transfer that to your kids, if that's something you want to do, if they've proven that as an adult, they can actually handle it.
Yeah, it's an important caveat. And this to me feels like the most obvious way that people probably think about when they think about helping their kids become millionaires is just straight up giving them money. I think when you asked me the question at the beginning of the episode, did your parents help you become millionaires? That's probably the first thing that comes to most people's minds when they hear, oh yeah, my parents helped me get to the financial status that I'm at today. But I actually think the first 4 methods that we talked about can be even more powerful, right? And they can start earlier, and you can sort of acclimate your child to a level of wealth as opposed to just giving them larger sums when they are in their, mid-20s, early 30s. So there's so many ways to skin the cat if you're doing really well financially yourself and you have that bandwidth to help your kids. I think any of these strategies would help you to boost your kid up to the next level in life and just give them an enormous leg up. So for my own experience, my parents did help me pay for school, and that gave me just the ridiculously powerful starting point of 0. When I graduated, I started at 0, and the very first paycheck that I brought in the door got to go towards me and my future instead of paying off the education that I'd already had. So I will say I made it as easy as possible on them. I had some scholarships and I went to relatively inexpensive state schools. But still, that is just a huge financial leg up that my parents gave me. College is a whole other kettle of fish that I think we'll get into in another episode. But for the right person with the right goals that are tailored towards needing education, I think that can be another great way to transfer wealth and help them start at 0, which I can tell you is a great place to be. Graduating and getting to keep your paychecks instead of giving a huge chunk of them back to the bank is really, really great. So one thing that money can do for you is buy stuff that can make your life a little bit easier. So I thought a fun, silly topic for today would be talking about some of the things that make our lives better every single day. So David, do you want to kick us off and talk about some things that you've spent your hard-earned money on that make your life better on a daily basis?
I try to find ways to do things around the house very efficiently and with very little mess. So I think my choices are all kitchen related or food preparation related. The first thing I do in the morning, or one of the first things I do in the morning, is some people have coffee. We talked in a previous episode. I do like pre-workout powders. Probably should do just cheaper caffeine, whatever it is, but that's the other episode. I do work out, so I do justify having the pre-workout powders, but it's just powder. You put it in a cup of water, and then what? You get a spoon and stir it up, which is a bunch of clanking, and we've already just established that I don't like crazy noises.
Uh-huh.
So there's this little mixer that I have. It's cheap, battery operated. Probably didn't cost me any more than $12 or $14 from Amazon, and I just every time. And that could be either protein powder or pre-workout, or if you're doing hot tea, you put the honey in, stir it up, dissolves like that, or sugar and coffee, whatever it is. So a little mixer, I use that every single day, multiple times a day, and it's very cheap and adds a lot of value, I think.
Okay, that is fascinating. I did not know such a thing existed.
Really?
So yeah. So
we're going to put a video.
Okay.
When this posts, I'm going to have a video of like how awesome it operates.
All right.
So everyone watch the video right now. Link below, not an affiliate link.
Yeah, that is not a thing that would contribute to my life happiness at all. But I'm kind of a weirdo when it comes to beverages. We can talk about that in another episode.
Beverages, that's why.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so thing number 2, your first one is a fancy spoon, more or less.
So I'm a bachelor. I live home alone, like Macaulay Culkin. And I don't need a...
Wait. Macaulay Culkin is married now to like the world's most beautiful woman. Her name is Brenda Song.
But he was in a movie called Home Alone.
Okay. Never mind. Just ignore it. It's cool. I'm fine.
All right. Okay, so I do cook for myself. And a very efficient way to do that, I have found over the last few years, is using an air fryer. So I have a Ninja air fryer. It's got the 2 sides. You can either match cook or cook them separately, or it's very easy to use, very easy cleanup. In addition to the air fryer, They have these paper liners that you can buy. So if you have an air fryer, you know how the bottom can get really dirty and oily and gross and you have to clean it every day. But if you have these paper liners, just throw it down there. Whether you're throwing chunks of steak in there to broil, whether you're putting your kids' chicken nuggets in there or French fries, you just pull the whole thing out into a container. No mess at all, so no cleaning. Very efficient. So I use that every day, probably multiple times a day, but every day. Number 3, also cooking. We've established in a previous episode about early jobs. You talked about how you were not selling boiled peanuts at 11 years old on the side of a questionable, sketchy street. That was one of my jobs growing up. But I also had a job as a short order cook, so I know how to flip eggs and prepare eggs for breakfast. But if you do that a lot, you know that you have to have a special pan so that it doesn't get scratched, doesn't stick. And you would take care of that pan, and you only use that one pan. You only use that pan for one thing and one thing only, and that is for eggs. So on top of my stove is just a nice egg pan. Okay. I usually eat eggs at least every other day. When my son's here, I cook for him. Those are the things that I use nearly every day that make my life better.
What exactly, is it a specific kind of pan? Like, is it a ceramic? Is it stainless steel? Is it like, what do you call it? The non-stick?
Like it's steel and Teflon.
Okay.
And it's just, I got a 2-pack from Costco. Gave the other one away as a gift. Kept one. Works.
All right.
But you can't, if you ever get one of these pans and you want a good egg pan, don't ever cook anything other than eggs in it and never ever use metal on it, like a fork.
All right. Yeah. I will try to up my egg game. That's good solid egg advice.
Upping egg games. That's what the listener came for today.
All right. Well, my 3 things are very, very different from yours. I don't have any kitchen stuff, although I really like our Vitamix blender and our KitchenAid mixer, but those aren't like everyday things. They're great and I treasure them. But my 3 everyday things are, number 1, our robot vacuum. His name is Jeeves. He is actually a little on the fritz right now, but overall, he is great. He helps us keep the dog hair under control, which brings me to item number 2, which is not an item at all, but is our beloved, perfect, wonderful dog, Miles. So dogs cost money. You have to feed them and care for them, take them to the vet, keep their vaccinations up to date. I love that dog to death. Dogs are good for your mental health. They encourage you to get more exercise. I'm a huge, huge proponent of having a dog. And then my 3rd thing, which is also not a thing, is just our community around here. We love where we live and we love the people that live here as well. Just having those people around to support you and enjoy spending time with you is invaluable to me. Last weekend, we had a musical Christmas party, which was absolutely delightful. People of all skill levels played some kind of musical instrument. And that's something I never would have done if we didn't have all these delightful friends around here. So basically, my takeaway here is if you don't have money to do any of the other things we talked about, just get your kid a dog. That'll make their life way, way better. Or a robot vacuum, then they'll have to do fewer chores. They'll appreciate that too.
Or an egg pan. I'm sure they'll love that.
Oh yeah. Gotta have a good egg pan. It's critical stuff.
Yeah, I might not be a millionaire, but I can make a mean egg.
Man, I can make some good eggs. There we go. What else can you ask for in life?
When I knew we were going to record this episode, I asked Stephen, my brother, who I'm sure the listeners know who he is by now, what he would recommend as ways parents can help their kids become millionaires. He gave it a lot of thought, I could tell. Some of them overlapped with what we talked about, but there were 2 that he provided, and it really hadn't even occurred to me, but they do make a lot of sense. Now, the chances of this happening are not as high as some others maybe, but they are potential approaches to ensure that one reaches a net worth of $1 million or more. The first one is winning the lottery. Now, I wouldn't want to do that because then you got to go to the convenience store often, and then you got to take it back and be like, can you scan this? I'm not sure. And you don't know if they like, oh, it wasn't a winner. Maybe they take it back, but it was a winner and you don't know. I'm not sure the legalities behind that. So it seems like a risky proposal for that reason.
Sure.
We do know people win the lottery. So it is possible to get rich by winning the lottery. Another that he proposed was to marry rich. That's probably easier to achieve than winning the lottery. And I know we didn't talk about those specifically, but if you're listening to this and you think those are good ways to help your kid reach $1 million, then please just address it in the comments. I get in the comments often. She's stating that she is going to prioritize responding to comments in 2025. Love to hear what you think about everything that we talked about today.
Yeah. Stephen Boyer, man. On the money as always. Stephen can do no wrong, can he? Perfect.
Stephen on the money. I think he should have that. That should be his own podcast.
Well, this has been a fun episode, and I hope you parents out there or potential parents got something out of this. And I think we've got some good topics coming up in the next few episodes. So come back for those, guys.
You know what just hit me? This doesn't even necessarily need to be for parents. You have nieces and nephews, right?
I sure do. I got a lot of them.
Yeah. So maybe, like, Carla, what have you done any of these 5 things for your nieces and nephews?
Well, I'm obviously encouraging them to marry rich. That's priority number 1. So beyond that, I think that's confidential. But yeah, obviously encouraging them to marry as rich as possible.
Well, I hope it works out. It does for some.
Yep, it sure does. It does.
Thank you all for listening. Please jump in the comments. Let us know some other ideas that you may have to help your kids become more financially savvy and successful as they go through their lives.
Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next time.